I got the keys, the keys, the keys. What are the keys to the kingdom? In the Bible, which is a book about the involution and evolution of the God and the mind of man, which is not to be literally interpreted, Jesus, who was also a parable, spoke in parables. And right before he shared the nine keys to the kingdom of heaven, which he literally said, the kingdom of heaven is within you, yet people that take a literal interpretation of the Bible don't want to take that literally. Then that's when they start talking about, oh, that's not what was said and meant. But he literally said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And so I like to use the Bible as a point of reference, as a point of text, because it is the most common knowledge that people have today. I am Satra Anuket, if this is your first time joining me, and I am the author of a book called From Fear to Freedom. It is about utilizing the 7 Hermetic principles to shift your mindsets, habits, and behaviors so that you can get to your freedom, so that you can get to your own personal heaven. I am a guide, not a guru, and I'm here to just share the love and to share the light because you are the light. All we got to do is just be it, shine. And we know that in the world that we're in today, there's more than just being able to just do something. That requires work, that requires practice. So I have this channel to share with you my personal experiences, my lessons, my insights, so that my stories can possibly inspire and, more importantly, be a blessing to you on your path, so that you know that you're not alone and you're going through this journey of life, this journey of consciousness. But as I was mentioning, right before Jesus shared the 9 keys to the kingdom of heaven, which is within you, he talked about 4 different types of human consciousness in the parable of the sower. And Jesus spoke in parables, and a parable by definition is a story that depicts a great spiritual truth, and it's explained in a way that allows us to be relatable, right? So that you can marinate on what's being said. Aha! I actually just said a parable right there, because if we think about me marinating, like I'm not literally a piece of meat marinating in some sauce, right? You have to listen for the takeaway, the meaning of what it is that I'm saying. You have to listen with your inner ear. And this is why Jesus spoke in parables, because he wanted to be able to make the message accessible so people could relate to his story. And the story of Jesus itself is a parable, and it explains our own Christ within and that journey and what it looks like. And I know some of y'all are saying, well, why are you using the Bible? You talk about Hermetic principles. There's over 6,000 books of the Bible, but we only got access to 66. What you talking about? What I'm saying is, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is still a lot of great information in the Bible, given our limited access. If you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, and you understand how to interpret a parable. This is why I'm here to share this information with you from the esoteric and metaphysical point of view. And in the book of Matthew, Jesus shared in a parable esoteric knowledge of the 9 keys to the kingdom. And rather than a lot of religious folks who have literal interpretations, rather than them understand that the kingdom of heaven is something that is within us, they would rather have a God in the sky or some kind of God in the Milky Way. But that is not the teachings of Yeshua. That is not the teachings of Jesus. That is not even how the Bible is supposed to be read, if you understand that it is the basic instructions for your life. So, having all that said, if we understand that the parable of the sower is a very important precursor, because it helps us understand what our ability is to be able to receive the kingdom of heaven. So based on whatever state your consciousness is in, is going to determine how you're able to receive this information. So he said that there were 4 types of hearers. And before I get into it, I want you to just to listen to it. But more importantly, I'm going to ask you a rhetorical question. What state are you currently in within your present unfoldment of consciousness when I share these 4 types? because I actually have thought about all four when I read it. And I was like, dang, there was a point in my life where I was in each and every stage, because again, the Bible is the unfoldment of the evolution and the involution of the mind of God in man. So we all are going to go through it. We all are going to experience this, because there's no skipping steps. There's no half stepping. Like, I don't know any baby that ever has come out the womb just immediately walking. Like, things take time. So, having all that said, let's get into the four types of hearers. So, the first type of person is a person that, those that hear, you don't really know if they heard it or not. They seem to hear it, right? But as soon as something happens, they lose to all senses. They lose to their senses and their sense consciousness. Meaning, and Jesus described this in the parable where he said that, they hear the seeds that are planted on the ground, and they're quickly obliterated by the birds, right? The birds, it could be pigeons, it could be vultures, it could be crows, it could be other birds in your life that are chirping away at you, taking all your seeds and your ideas. But as soon as the seed is planted, the birds come and just immediately obliterate whatever that seed is and that seed was. And again, I'm speaking in parables, right? So not a literal seed, but whatever seed it is that you're trying to grow within your consciousness. So that's the first type of hearer, somebody who basically just has no control of their senses. And as soon as something is thrown down, their senses take over. Their flesh immediately takes over. They have no ability to control that animal instinct within them. So the second type is one that I can certainly relate to. And this is a person that is of rocky consciousness. And so it's a person who gladly hears the word and who wants to believe it. But as soon as trials come, as soon as something goes wrong in their life, they get a little bit on shaky ground, right? They don't really use it. They immediately throw it out because they don't fully trust and believe. They allow their senses to take over of that situation. They want to believe, but they fall to the senses because how can I not respond to this when this person just broke up with me, or when I just lost my this, or when I have this bill, or I lost my job, or I can't do this. Like, how can I believe in the truth, believe in this seed that is going to grow when everything is in front of me is on a rocky, shaky foundation? This is that second type of consciousness where as soon as something happens in their life, they immediately just are in shambles. And yeah, it's easy for us to feel good when things are going great in our life. It's easy for us to say and to have all the confidence and the strength when things are going great in our life. But the moment something bad happens, what do you do with all those feelings of emotions of everything working out for you, knowing that it's going to work out? Or do you succumb to the situation within your senses, what's being presented in front of you, which is really just a reflection of the past? If we understand universal law, we know that we're the cause and the effect of all that we see in our reality. So what we see physically in front of us, as a lot of metaphysicians say, is just the mirage. It's just the illusion, because where everything starts, begins, and ends is in the mind. All is the mind. God, creator, universe, consciousness, it's all one, and it's all something that we are directly connected to. But we lose that sense of connection because of something physically happening in our life that throws us off, and now we're on shaky, instead of being on solid ground. That's the second kind of consciousness. The third type of consciousness, I personally believe, is the majority of the world right now, because we're constantly being bombarded with so much negative information. This is a person who has a consciousness that is on a thorny ground. They want to hear, they want to believe, they want to have that authority over their life. However, as much time that they spend on doing all that work and doing all that, they spend just as much time with putting mental focus and energy with the cares and the burdens of the world. They are constantly being fed with news media. Like, I know when I was growing up, my mom and my grandmother, they were always watching the news. And now we got another form of media. We have social media, which is literally a tool to take your attention and your energy, your most valuable currency, and to get it to focus on that. And instead of being like, dang, why does grandma just sit in front of the TV and watch the news all day? At least grandma was doing that for 8 hours. At least there was a time where grandma had to get up and cook dinner and, or do whatever. Like, she couldn't travel in the car with the TV and watching the news. But now, guess what? We can. We got it right here on our cell phone, where everybody is constantly glued to some sort of media, which is the majority of it is focusing on what is wrong. This is why there's such a heightened sense of all of these fear tactics, because that thereby then perpetuates that into our reality. As above, so below. Whatever you bind on earth, you bind in heaven. Whatever you lose on earth, you lose in heaven. It's the same particular law of correspondence, and understanding that whatever I have within my consciousness and my attention and my energy, intention, attention, manifestation, I am. Whatever I give the most energy to is going to become my reality. So as much as I want to, if my focus is only of the negative, then that is what I'm going to experience. And now in this day and age, people have a tendency to attach themselves to the negative, to really, really bind to the drama, to these hard conditions of the war. This is happening. And I'm not saying to spiritually bypass and negate that it's actually happening, but the more that we give energy to it, the more that it perpetuates it. This is why I personally will never give energy to a narcissist. Like, in my book, I wrote about some of my relationships, and people that know me are like, hey, why didn't you include this person or that person? Like, we know that was a foundation of a lot of things that happen in your life. And I said, you know what? I will never give energy to a narcissist, because a narcissist, an energy vampire, or a situation that I understand how energy works. I understand the law of vibration. I understand the law of mentalism. I know that if I think and I feed into that to whatever extent or degree, by calling them out is giving them energy. So instead of calling them out and saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe this person did this to me. They lied. They're this, they're that. It's not my job to do that, because my job is to call all of my power back to me. Because I'm thereby continuing to fuel them with my currency, with my energy, by giving them mental thought, mental words. What did Damian Marley say? Like, physical contact is a waste of flesh. Mental, verbal conflict is a waste of words. Like, we really have to understand that the reason why there is so much social media, so much energy that is being projected our way into feeding this hyperactive way is because it literally is pulling our currency. That's what the great African-American author wrote when she was talking about the matrix and people being attracted like batteries. That was a parable for our mental currency and our energy and how it's being harvested. So when we attach ourselves to someone else's reality, we experience that reality that we attach ourselves to. So, and whoever that somebody else is, whether it be a public figure, a political figure, a personal love interest figure, whatever that figure is, that is their story, their reality. And do not, I repeat, do not let another person determine your worth, your God-given worth and birthright of abundance. Do not let anybody else determine your worth or your reality, because consciousness, your own consciousness, is the only reality. And what is that reality? Well, your consciousness is your awareness of being. So what kind of awareness are you currently in? What is occupying your mental space most of the time? What is causing you to have certain types of feelings or those thoughts? So if those thoughts are causing you to have certain kinds of feelings, then we got to check what it is that we're thinking about, right? We got to check those thoughts, because that is becoming our reality. All right. I digress. The fourth kind of consciousness that we should all be working on, and I mentioned this before in some of my videos of being a good gardener, gardening our inner, but this particular parable, Jesus describes it as being the sower. And within this fourth kind of consciousness, being a sower, there's actually four things that we need to understand about this level of consciousness. And I really want you to marinate on what I'm saying within these four things within the fourth type. The first thing that you need to understand about this particular sower is that this consciousness understands in my physical body that there is something greater than my individualized self. There's something greater than me that has given me this, because I clearly didn't make this tree. I didn't make these plants behind me. I may have birthed my beautiful boys, but I wasn't involved in the intricate details of creating their organs. And I don't know how it worked inside of me. Yeah, they grew into amazing, beautiful, healthy baby boys. But I was the vessel for that. So this particular sower understands that there is something greater than me, greater than the Father that works than me. That this is that level of consciousness, that you understand there's something greater than you. And I'm not saying anything religious. I'm saying a higher power, a higher intelligence that is greater than us. Because let's face it. You could go to great distances, mentally or physically, no matter how intelligent I think I am, my ego thinks I am. And I feel like I have a lot of intelligence and accolades behind me with my degrees and my experience being global brand this and marketer and international business and all that. But that's just my ego. Because I know it doesn't matter how far I travel and how smart I think I am within my idea. By the time I get to New Zealand, God has already been there. God knows the entire structure of wherever it is that I'm trying to go already. Consciousness already knows that. So the best thing that I can do is understand that God is everywhere equally present, and that I am just an individualization of God in the flesh. I am made in God's own likeness and image and imagination. And the best thing that I can do is just express that and be the light, be the individualized image and imagination, being the vessel, meaning being good soil. So this person understands that they gotta be good soil. The third thing that the sower understands is that they know and understand how seeds grow. And I encourage you, if you're dealing with anything in life that you're trying to see grow, to get a plant, to get some kind of fruit or vegetable. So I have a garden that I started growing a year ago, and I had watermelons, bell peppers, and eggplants. And I soon had to learn that just because something came out of the ground and it started growing stems and leaves, that it didn't necessarily fruit. And the truth of the matter is that we do not generally reap a full harvest of whatever it is that we're trying to grow as soon as the seed is planted or as soon as it grows. We have to understand that during that time, under the right conditions, under the right nourishment, that seeds take their own time to actually fully grow. A year later, I finally now have reaped the harvest, but during that time, I had to remain patient. I had to water it. And every single day, I actually have to guard the plants from getting attacked by aphids or other things with too much sun or if not enough water. It's a daily practice and something that I have to do in order to reap the full benefit of the conditions being perfect so that the plant could actually produce fruit. And it's the same as everything throughout nature. We have to understand that we have to maintain those conditions. And a lot of times we go back to being rocky or we go back to being thorny because we're like, dang, this situation is taking so long, or we want to check to see the progress. And then by doing that, we actually end up digging up the roots we end up having to start all over again because we want to go back and check our progress. And it's in a way that is damaging. It's like we out there with a hoe, just ruining the roots and ruining everything, because we like, okay, well, when we check our progress, it tends to look like, oh, I should be this far by now. Or, oh, if this wouldn't have happened, then I would have been a lot further. And so it causes us to focus our attention and maintain that level of consciousness, thereby feeding that situation and thereby perpetuating it into our reality. And we express it all over again, and we experience it all over and over again. It's like we awaken the dead. We summon the past back into our lives. That's why Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. Like, don't feed it any longer. Feed and fuel what it is that you want to grow, because we're constantly having to do that anyway. Nature shows us that with me and my gardening experience, and life shows us that. And so when you know how to be a good sower and you know how to grow, you become the God force, the higher intelligence, to be greater than the self. And that's when we become gods, but with the little g, right? Because we understand that we're still only God manifested in God's nature. We learn how to stay in our lane. So understand these 4 levels of consciousness, be a good sower. And my next video is going to be introducing you to one of the 9-part series of the keys to the kingdom.